it's a problem. It's a huge problem that needs to be taken seriously. What What's up, you guys? Aditi, welcome back to our channel. This is the part 2 in anxiety disorders. Watch this video first to know about the 4 types or 4 things that can differentiate psychological disorders and abnormal behavior with normal behavior, and look at part 1. You can also say part 1 after this video, like that's fine. I think if I remember, if you can hear construction, it's not happening in my building, it is happening outside in the adjacent building. So we'll start with phobia. Now you will think, phobia? How is that an anxiety disorder? It is because you tend to fear something, an object or something like that, and that causes anxiety in you because you want to get, and that's the reason why you get away from it. So this anxiety is basically your sympathetic nervous system kicking in, okay, and you have that fight flight response, right? You run away, which is the flight response. So it is an anxiety disorder. And phobia is basically an irrational avoidance of certain objects, okay? So it can be snake, which can hurt you, and even a spider for that matter. But it's basically an irrational fear that we have and we try to avoid it. And like I've already said in the psychological disorder or abnormal behavior video, that if it interferes with our normal day-to-day life, then it is a problem. Now, the definition of phobia: it is characterized by persistent and irrational fear of a specific object or activity. It is accompanied by a compelling desire to avoid it. There are different types of phobias. We just want to talk about 3. First is specific phobia, like specific objects, like phobia. Second is social phobia, and the third one is agoraphobia. Specific phobia is the most common type of phobia, okay? A specific phobia is the excessive fear of specific objects or situations. So we tend to fear particular objects, like somebody may fear dogs, somebody may fear insects, snakes, just spiders. We know Ron Weasley, he's afraid of spiders. So there is this fear of certain objects. There are other kinds of phobia, which is like situational phobia. So like there's claustrophobia. Claustrophobia is basically fearing of closed spaces, like maybe in an elevator, it's a closed space. Then there is acrophobia, which is fear of heights. So generally these phobias happen, like something happens in your childhood, and that's the reason why we do have these phobias. But it's said that as we grow up, we become adults, these phobias kind of just fade, they kind of go away. But if they don't go away, if they still persist in our adulthood, then they generally won't go away unless you actually do take professional help. Coming to the second type of phobia that I spoke about is that social phobia. So social phobia is extreme form of shyness that can interfere with an individual's daily life, and it also involves a chronic irrational fear of and a compelling desire to avoid situations where they may be scrutinized. So something like we know this, like public speaking, standing on a podium or on a stage and performing or saying something, giving a speech or presenting something, that is a part of social phobia. There are other chotu wale which we don't really remember, like even eating in public with a lot of people around, or like going to the restroom, like a public restroom, that is also a part of social phobia, and people do have these issues and they try to avoid going, or they try to avoid eating in public. It may not seem like a big thing, like हाँ ठीक है ना मत खाओ in front of the public, or हाँ don't go to the washroom, but it does cause inconvenience, right? It's not okay to hold on to your bladder for too long. So it is causing hurdle in your life. It is, or it can in the future, in the long run, it can hurt you physically, like your health. So it's a problem. It's a huge problem that needs to be taken seriously. Like I already said in the PTSD one, in the part one video, where because you have this anxiety and you don't like feeling like this, being scared and all of that, so people tend to take self medications, substance abuse. That I'm talking about drugs, they start abusing drugs and consuming alcohol. So people who do have phobias, they tend to also do the same thing. So when it comes to social phobia, they do tend to start consuming alcohol and start abusing drugs. You may think that how does alcohol actually help, or how do drugs do it? So I'll just explain a bit about alcohol. That what alcohol does is it kind of inhibits our cognitive abilities and our prefrontal cortex. We know, if you watch our biological videos, you would know that our prefrontal cortex is the part of our brain that's right here. It is actually our personality, our judgment, our critical thinking. That part does all of that, and that is the part that at times is trying to stop us. It thinks about what consequences or repercussions can happen if you do a particular thing. Like if you're going to be on stage and give a presentation, that is the part of the brain that may tell you that, oh, what if you trip and fall, or what if you say the wrong thing or something like that. So it's always thinking about the repercussions, and alcohol can dial it down, can mute that voice in your head in a way. So it kind of inhibits your cognitive abilities, and that's how your anxiety also kind of it kind of relaxes. I think it's GABA. It's like it works as GABA. So it kind of relaxes your nervous system as well. That's another reason why alcohol works. So people tend to self-medicate, which is also not a good thing. Last kind of phobia is agoraphobia. Now, agoraphobia is the cluster of different fears, all of which evoke intense anxiety about crowds or open spaces. So crowds could be supermarkets, malls, fish market, even movie theaters, maybe even stations, airports, bus stops with a lot of crowd. And closed spaces could be elevators, tunnels, even that is also a closed space. This tends to occur in teenagers and even in early adulthood, like young adults. But that does not mean that it won't occur or it won't happen later in life. Whenever you are in these spaces, like the open space, crowded spaces or enclosed spaces, it triggers a very phobic reaction, a very severe, intense phobic reaction. And as a reason why, again, it hurdles your daily life and your daily activities. So most people do tend to take treatment for agoraphobia. Because it kind of stops you from getting out of your house. You're so scared to get out of your house, and I will speak about why this happens in the second disorder we'll talk about. But they tend to not leave the house mainly because they are afraid of getting that phobic reaction, by triggering that phobic reaction. And this is where we come to the second type of anxiety disorder, again, is panic disorder. So panic disorder is characterized by a repeated occurrence of severe panic. It can occur in absence of any fearful situation or an event. It lasts around 15 to 20 minutes, but sometimes it can also last up to an hour. And it generally occurs in specific situations, like maybe you are in a shopping mall or a supermarket, or maybe you are driving a car and something happens, or maybe you are public speaking, you're doing public speaking. So even that is a situation where it can happen. So what exactly happens during a panic attack? So anxiety increases to an almost intolerable level. An individual breaks out in cold sweat, they feel dizzy, they exhibit an elevated heart rate, and may even feel difficulty breathing. They have this feeling that they are not going to make it, they would die right then and there. It's impossible to escape the situation. People tend to actually have panic disorder with agoraphobia, or panic disorder without agoraphobia. This is just extra information, it's not in psychology of adjustment textbook. It's just something that I read about, and even my professor who was explaining this topic spoke about this. So like I said, that this does happen in specific situations, like maybe you're in a supermarket or something like that. So people tend to have a panic disorder, and that kind of causes them to have agoraphobia. So let's take this example that somebody does have panic disorder about closed, like crowded places. Let's take crowded places. So they are in a supermarket and they have this panic attack in that moment, okay, and it does happen a couple of times, a few times, and that kind of becomes a classical conditioning thing. Like when I was explaining phobia, that you fear something, you get away from from that thing or from that situation, your anxiety or your distress goes down, makes you feel good. So every time you run away from that thing that you're afraid of, you feel good, so that becomes a loop. So that's what happens with panic attack as well. So you start avoiding supermarkets and all those places, all those situations that can cause you to have a panic attack. Also, sometimes it's the anticipation of getting a panic attack can also give you a panic attack. So because you are trying to avoid these situations, that can cause one person to have agoraphobia, because they are afraid of getting a panic attack in these places, so they just avoid leaving the house. So that's the reason why panic attack with agoraphobia or without agoraphobia. So somebody may come to you, or like a therapist, saying that, oh, I think I'm afraid because I have agoraphobia. So you need to understand whether it's just agoraphobia, or is it, or the agoraphobia is because of a panic disorder. That's it. And that is it for today's video. We are done with anxiety disorder. I have no idea what we're gonna do next. We'll see. I hope you enjoyed the part 1 and the part 2 of anxiety disorder. So yeah, like, share, subscribe to this channel, our channel, and I'll see you next Friday with another psychology video.